Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network, to educate, to enlighten, to entertain. And I'm your host, Lillian Cauldwell, with the new episode of Scam Damnation. And today we're going to talk about defense against scammers. Now, don't start laughing, but our defenses, for whatever the reason, are weak and ineffectual. Recently, there was a lady who worked for the New York Times in their financial department, and she said, and I quote, "I was scammed out of $50,000, and I was aware that I was being scammed out of $50,000, and I could have stopped it at any time, but I didn't. Why is that?" So today, I'm going to talk about what makes humans tick and why, even though our body and mind is telling us that this is not right, something is extremely wrong, we still go ahead and let ourselves be taken advantage of or penetrated, depending how one wants to look at it. A lot has to do with human behavior and the psychology of what makes which. If you read a lot of the articles now showing up on social media or on Google with articles saying this is why humans do this and this is what you need to do, and yet somehow humans haven't quite figured out how to protect themselves from themselves. Now, after I was scammed twice and was told, "You be a very good girl or it's going to be really terrible for you the third time around," and that was from the Office of Aging. And my son said to me, "You better be careful, Mom, or I'm going to have to invoke my power of attorney." In either event, they were both right and they were both wrong. Listen, when you read that a top financial person with the New York Times got scammed, knowing she was being scammed, it kind of makes you wonder what prevented her from saying, "No, I'm not going to do this." Now, I went to therapy for several weeks to find out why I did what I did. And in my case, I really didn't realize I was being scammed. Now, I followed the suggestions that I now have read in numerous articles by noted psychologists and doctors, and it's pretty much the same MO. So, what is the behavioral psychology? Well, number one, they tell you that seniors are most apt to be scammed, especially senior women. But apparently, the lady who worked at the New York Times, who was a financial expert, was not a senior, and yet she got scammed. And there are other people like her with doctorates and master's degrees or in professional positions. Talk about the Ponzi scams, where known CPAs go in because they become financial planners. "We have such a deal for you. We can double your money. Just put in." And people know what Ponzi scams are. And they've heard that if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And yet they still do it. Why? And yet I didn't know or even realized I was being scammed. And you're saying, "Lillian, has it happened again?" Excuse me. And I can say, honestly, yes, it has happened again. Only this time I went and looked up related economy. And yes, he told me all these things that he thought would influence me. And yes, he even arranged a video call. But the interesting part of that video call was he never showed himself, just the JPEG that he borrowed from this very famous person. And when he spoke to me, it didn't quite add up to an intelligent entrepreneur who's a multi-billionaire and's been around for a long time. So I did a little homework and listened to the real voice of this famous person and realized this guy was trying to scam me. In fact, he wanted to know if I could get on Telegram. And I told him, no, I do not use Telegram. But in my naivety, I said, I do use Skype. But apparently that was beyond this scammer's imagination. So we never exchanged information. And as soon as I heard the real person's voice, I blocked him. And he remained blocked. And I reported him to social media. Now, you should also know there are a lot of people out there that impersonate your favorite actors or actresses. And they can do it now with AI that have programs that can use the voices of these famous people without their permission. And so you don't know whether you're listening to the real McCoy or it's a scammer. But they prey on your senses. They prey on your emotions. And most of all, they know that most people won't bother to do their homework. Now, when a person approaches you, even before scammers came along, there are always undesirable people that you met in the chat rooms who said these things to you. Now, I know when I look at myself in the mirror, I know some pretty obvious things. And when I hear somebody stretching the obvious to make it sound like a compliment, it makes me very, very suspicious. And as a result of my therapy sessions, I now listen not only to what my inner mind is telling me, but also what my body is telling me. So if you hear somebody saying to you, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're the love of my life, I can't live without you, pay attention to what your inner mind and what your body is telling you. Because if those comments are making you uncomfortable and you've told the person that and they still continue, they're not the real McCoy. So block them and get out of town. I know it's difficult. People like to be complimented. People like to have people like them, appreciate them, value them. But don't become a scam statistic. Try to remember and remain rooted, both feet firmly on the ground. If they start rushing you to go into a conference room where if you do your homework, they will tell you it is a private room, nobody will know what you're saying. It's like going out into the ocean or a lake and having an accident, but you are so full of yourself, you do not have your designated buddy with you. Therefore, if something bad happens to you, nobody knows about it. And if you're several miles or 100 miles away from a hospital or a police station or even a fire station, you're in trouble. So when you find somebody or they send you a letter coming out from LinkedIn or Facebook or even Twitter and say, I saw your profile and I was struck by how beautiful you are, or I listened to your podcast and you have a wonderful voice. It is so soothing and comforting. Listen to what your inner self is telling you. As for the rest about AI, if you know which company is putting out the AI that you are using, or you feel like this person is using to assist them, contact the company and tell them. If you're uncomfortable, contact the Attorney General and tell them, somebody approached me and I wasn't sure if that was really the real person or somebody else. Don't let your regular behavior jump in immediately. If there's something that makes you squirm or something that makes you start laughing, that's an indication you are uncomfortable with how this person is approaching you. And believe it or not, there are different voices and tones one can use when using AI. And if you find it stilted, go over to Google and say, what does it mean when a guy says ABC 123? And see what Google has to say about it. Don't laugh. I have done that when guys and women have said some very complimentary things to me. And while I'm a nice person and a good person, I also know my self-worth. And when the compliments get a little too complimentary, it makes me very suspicious. And it forces me to stop, pause, and question it. Don't become a guinea pig because these professional scammers are using AI. It's the little things, folks. It's the details, folks, that will keep you from being scammed. And they ask AI the same questions. If I were to try and convince somebody to buy my product or service, what words would I use to persuade them or motivate them? Remember the song, You Can Get Anything You Want at Alice's Restaurant? Well, you can get anything you need with AI. So remember, listen to what your inner conscious and your body is telling you, because now you can almost feel or sniff out what they're trying to do to you. They're trying to unbalance you. They're trying to persuade you with pretty words. And words are pretty. And behavior is not. When I was bringing up my son, I used something called reverse psychology, knowing well that if you say one thing, you'll get that person to do the exact opposite of what you're saying. So be on the lookout for that, because that's how they trick you. So now you have something more to worry about than just spirits and ghosts and werewolves, zombies, Dracula, werewolves. Now for your next monster, ladies and gentlemen, scammers is your biggest monster. I want to thank you very much for listening to this episode of Frontline Scam Defenses on Scam Damnation. You can listen to it all over again at youtube.com/PWR Network LLC, PW Talk Radio. Also on our website, passionateworldtalkradio.com. Also on Spreaker.com/PWTR. All of the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram. Take a listen. YouTube has 2 accounts. one for all audio and also one for video. So choose your pick and get the same information. We're sponsored by The Obstacles, a podcast certified training where you learn in 2 months, 1 hour class every morning from 10 to 11. First half of the class, lecture material. The second half of the class, questions and answers, and you actually do create and present a podcast. And then to get your certificate of training, you present your 3 podcasts, 1 per week on PWTRN. If you're interested in learning more about podcasting, you can intern at the station for 90 days. After 90 days, because you have built up an audience with your specially passionate podcast, you can join the team at PWTRN. Interested? Email us, pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com, or go over to our website, https://educational.passionateworldtalkradio.com. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on Scam Damnation with your host, Lillian S. Cauldwell. Have a great and hopefully cooler weekend.